everyone. We will now hear from the CEO of nChain, Nguyen, who's going to talk about the difference between Bitcoin and Bitcoin Cash, which a lot of you, I imagine, have been wondering about. So let's welcome everyone, Nguyen.
Thank you. So it's great to be back at a university because it makes me remember the days of when I was leaving university and law school a long time ago in the 1990s. And that was the era of the internet emerging. And if you recall back then, although I'm sure most of you were just being born at the time, which is making me feel very old today, that was this exciting time when the internet is emerging, and people were talking about the excitement of something called e-commerce. The idea that you could actually begin doing things like shop and buying things on the internet. That was an amazing concept at the time, but today we have fast-forwarded a couple of decades to it being a robust global e-commerce system, which is far beyond what people would have imagined. Today, I'm here to talk to you about Bitcoin Cash, but in particular, the dreams of a new world. And as you all of here who are students at the University of Exeter are planning your career choices, I'm hoping you latch on to the excitement of this dream of turning e-commerce to what we at nChain call B-commerce, Bitcoin commerce, a world that is a global payment system driven by Bitcoin, that is fast, low fees, super easy to confirm, and powering all sorts of new functionality all around the world. That's the dream we have at nChain and why we exist. It's also a dream that was birthed in this, the original Satoshi Nakamoto white paper that was released in 2008, which created the idea of Bitcoin. But more importantly for our purposes today, describes what we believe is the power of Bitcoin Cash. Because if you actually read the title of the white paper, it's very important to understanding why Bitcoin Cash is important. It's Bitcoin, a peer-to-peer electronic cash system. At nChain, we believe that Bitcoin Cash is the true Bitcoin, and that the legacy Bitcoin, which we now call Bitcoin Core because it's been controlled by the core developer group, known as BTC as its ticker symbol, is no longer the true Bitcoin. And the reason is because Bitcoin Cash has a system with bigger blocks, lower fees, and faster speed. And it is only Bitcoin Cash, in our view, that can fulfill the original Satoshi Nakamoto paper's vision of a peer-to-peer electronic cash system. So I want to spend the next few minutes explaining why we believe this and what the difference is between these two forms of Bitcoin, and more importantly, how this will help power a new world, which Craig Wright, our chief scientist, is going to talk with you about even more. So to understand that, we need to understand why Bitcoin needs to scale massively. And by scaling massively, what I mean is the ability to process lots and lots more transactions at faster speed globally around the world. And that could only happen, in our view, through Bitcoin Cash. And here's why. The original Satoshi Nakamoto white paper describes Bitcoin as peer-to-peer electronic cash. There are several important elements to that. First, it needs to be electronic cash, meaning it needs to be used easily on a daily basis as cash. You need to be able to walk out to the pret-a-manger store right outside the lobby here and pay for your cup of coffee that's £5 or your sandwich that's £4 with electronic cash. It also needs to be peer-to-peer, meaning that I need to be able to send it easily anywhere in the world to any of you. So I live in Los Angeles and I travel around the world, and this nice blonde young lady here in the glasses, if I want to send her $5 worth of Bitcoin Cash, I should be able to do it instantly, quickly, and it should not cost a lot of money to do so. That's the vision of what Bitcoin was supposed to be. But it's not what happened with Bitcoin Core, and here's why. Bitcoin Core had at one point no limit on the size of its blocks in the blockchain, and for certain reasons, which Craig can explain, got imposed a 1 megabyte block cap that has existed until this day. That's not very big. If you look at the legacy Bitcoin chain with a megabyte, which is very small, that's about the size of a JPEG image file. If I took a selfie of myself up here and texted it to one of you, that file size is about a megabyte. So every 10 minutes, all of the transactions on the Bitcoin blockchain are added into a block and then added to the prior blocks to create the chain. But a 1 megabyte block only allows about 3 transactions a second, and at maximum 7 transactions a second on the blockchain. You can only fit so many transactions into a block. Compare that to the global Visa network, which averages on any given day 2,000 transactions a second, and during its peak periods, such as Christmas holiday shopping season, 56,000 transactions a second. If you compare those numbers, it's pretty obvious that at 1 megabyte blocks, the Bitcoin network can never scale to power a global peer-to-peer electronic cash system. And here's why that happened. There's been a debate in the Bitcoin community over all these years about what Bitcoin should be, what the network should be. Should the network be simply a settlement layer where you do faster transactions for cheap fees off of the chain and then periodically settle those transactions onto the blockchain? There's a camp of people who believe that. I call them the small blockers. They want to keep the blocks small and treat it as a settlement layer. Or do you believe in the big block vision of Bitcoin, which is what we at nChain do? It's the original Satoshi Nakamoto vision of the blockchain being a single blockchain where all the transactions are processed and immediately confirmed to the blockchain. And it created this divide in the Bitcoin community for many years where there was a lot of infighting. And the reason for the infighting was that there were some practical issues being caused by keeping the block small. This is a diagram of what's called the mempool. It's sort of the waiting room, the queue line, where if you want to send a transaction, if I'm sending it to my nice friend, the blonde lady there with the glasses, but there have been more transactions in the last 10 minutes that can fit into that 1 megabyte block, my transaction has to sit somewhere. It has to sit over here in the mempool and wait until there's room in another block. And this is a diagram of what's happened to the mempool since 2013 through the end of last year. The size of the bubbles represents the size of the mempool. As you can see, the bubbles are getting larger. And by the end of the last year, the mempool got large, meaning there was lots and lots of transactions waiting to get added to the blockchain. And it could take 2, 4, 6, even 8 hours by that point for a transaction to get sent through, validated, and confirmed to the blockchain. That is not how a global peer-to-peer electronic cash system will work. Because if I'm standing at the Pret-a-Manger and I want my coffee and the merchant is going to take my money, they're not going to wait 8 hours for it to get confirmed. You'll have a mutiny behind me in the line. What that also meant is a practical effect on the transaction fees that get charged in the Bitcoin network. Because when you send a transaction, these miners who run the nodes that maintain the ledger need to get paid something in order to deliver their computing power. And because the mempool was getting large and the waiting period was getting large, you had to increasingly pay higher and higher fees to get your transaction in. Otherwise, you had to wait longer. It had to be like, Craig, I want my transaction in now, so I'll pay you $20 to send the transaction so I don't have to wait 8 hours. And if you see here, this is the transaction fee chart from last year, starting from February just through January of this year. You see some huge spikes starting in November, December, and then January, coinciding with the time when the mempool was getting larger. It was costing more money to send transactions on the Bitcoin Core network. And it created this economic reality. It was costing upwards of $5, sometimes even 20 US dollars just to send a Bitcoin transaction. And none of you in this room, and certainly not people in Kenya, in the Philippines, or other developing territories where Bitcoin will be most valuable, can afford to pay $20 just to buy their cup of coffee using Bitcoin. And that's why we had what was called the Bitcoin Cash fork in August of last year, where certain people within the Bitcoin community wanted to restore this original, powerful vision of what Bitcoin was supposed to be. And as you can see up here, the chain had been going on, the original chain. It started turning dark. We call it the Darth Vader era, where the fees got high, transactions got slow, and people said, enough. We're going to restore the original vision. The old chain kept going down. As you can see there, we call it SegWit because it introduced this concept of segregated witness, which we think is bad. The Bitcoin Cash chain emerged as of August 1st, continued on to restore the original vision. And I want to describe for you what the big differences are. The main difference is a different philosophy in block size. The original Bitcoin Core chain stays at 1 or some effort at raising the block size to 2 megabytes. That's really small. And at nChain, we like big blocks, and we cannot lie. And so the Bitcoin Cash chain birthed with a default block size of 8 megabytes in size, so significantly larger. You can fit more transactions in every 10 minutes. But that's not big enough. It's nowhere big enough to rival Visa and MasterCard. So there's a protocol upgrade happening very shortly. We're lucky to be talking to you today because on May 15th, the first major protocol upgrade of Bitcoin Cash is happening, where the software which is used to run the network is being upgraded. And one of the main differences is increasing the default block size to 32 megabytes. So a significant leap forward in increasing capacity to have a network that will be able to power this global system. That's still nowhere near enough to become a Visa MasterCard rival, but there are plans with the developer groups who manage the software, which we're working with at nChain, to go even larger. In fact, we believe in a day when you'll get to at least 1 gigabyte blocks, which are 1,000 megabytes. That's massive. If we have a network on Bitcoin Cash with a gigabyte block, that will create throughput capacity of over 10,000 transactions a second and 864 million transactions a day, which is faster than the average speed on the Visa network. But we dream even bigger, because I said we like really, really big blocks. Can you imagine a day where there are even 1 terabyte size blocks? It sounds like a dinosaur, but it's going to be the future and not the past. That is 1 million megabytes. And at 1 million megabytes, you have amazing capacity. And it wasn't even nChain that really birthed the idea of a terabyte-sized block, but we really believe in it. It could contain every 10 minutes 4 billion with a B Bitcoin Cash transactions and 7 million transactions a second. Johannes Vermorel, who is the CEO of a company in France called Locad in the quantitative supply chain management space, is the person who sort of first birthed this idea in a blog post in December. And he calculated that if you assume a worldwide population of 10 billion humans, if we have a Bitcoin Cash network with 1 terabyte size blocks, you would have a data network that could power 50 transactions per human per day. That's massive. And what it tells us is that Bitcoin Cash can be more than just a payment system, because most of us aren't doing 50 financial transactions a day. This can power a data network because in the scripting language with Bitcoin, when you send transactions, you can also attach data and computer programming language that is fairly basic and primitive, but that combined with other tools we're creating at nChain can power a whole new revolution in technology. And so that's why we are participating with our friends at CoinGeek, which is a crypto media site, as well as with Locad to design a technical solution for what's called the unspent transaction database that will grow as well if we reach this day of 1 terabyte size blocks. It's an example of some of the kinds of things we're doing at nChain to prepare for this day. One of the things we're doing now is talking to merchants about why they should be adopting Bitcoin Cash and why it's favorable for them. Let me give you a few examples. So today, when you use credit cards, merchants will typically pay a fee of about 2 to 3% per transaction to the payment card networks, plus some type of base fee, which can be as high as 30 cents. Technically, if you're a merchant, you can accept Bitcoin for free. But you probably need some apps or technology solutions to make it easier because the stores of the world don't want to figure out a Bitcoin wallet. So there are companies such as Coinbase and BitPay which offer some merchant solutions, and they will charge a fee for that, about 1%. And if you want to exchange your Bitcoin to fiat currency, let's say to the British pound, the merchant will probably pay another fee as well. On average, accepting Bitcoin can save merchants, we believe, about 1% per transaction, which doesn't sound like a lot, but if you're running mass-scale business, that really adds to your profit margin. And merchants did start accepting Bitcoin. In 2014, it was mostly small merchants. Then in early 2014, Overstock.com became the first major e-commerce company to say, we'll do it. And that led to more large companies in 2014 and 15, such as Microsoft, Expedia, Time, and Newegg, and big charities saying, we'll accept Bitcoin. But then something happened in 2017 approximately where merchant adoption started slowly decreasing. And merchants started dropping the use of Bitcoin, to the extent that JP Morgan released a report at the end of last year concluding that merchant adoption was decreasing. And a perfect example of that was right before Christmas. The online gaming distributor Steam had been accepting Bitcoin for payments, but said no more because it was costing them $20 in transaction fees just to get a payment from one of their customers. And that is why Bitcoin Cash is the more powerful option for commerce and for merchants. Here's a chart of the fees on the different major blockchains to send a transaction from the day after Christmas last year, which is a fairly significant shopping day, at least in the United States. The yellow, average transaction fee. The blue, median transaction fee. You can see Bitcoin Core, an average transaction fee that day of $44.67. Who is going to use that to pay for anything if it costs you $44? Bitcoin Cash at the time was under about 30 and 20 cents for average and median transaction fees. That's a huge differential. We also did a bit of a math exercise using data about how many transactions Amazon did last year on Black Friday weekend, which is the biggest shopping weekend in the United States, the days of Thanksgiving and after Thanksgiving. And on those 2 days last year, they processed 12.78 million online transactions. If they had accepted Bitcoin Core, on those days the average fees were $6, they would have paid $76 million in payment processing fees. If Amazon had accepted on those days Bitcoin Cash, transaction fees were only around 20 cents. They would have saved over 90% on fees and paid only $2.5 million in fees. But that's because Bitcoin wallets still need to be adjusted for what is the greater volume and lower fees system on Bitcoin Cash. When that happens, we expect the fees to drop as low as 2 cents. And when that day happens, Amazon would only be paying transaction fees for about $250,000 US for that volume of online transactions. That's the world we think that is entirely possible for Bitcoin Cash, with advantages for merchants of lower transaction fees, minimizing foreign currency exchange rates, particularly when you're accepting payments and customers from around the world. You can create a global single digital currency. With instant payment confirmations, merchants are less exposed to the risk of chargebacks when someone returns something or disputes a charge. That's a significant cost for merchants. And auto-renewing payments for things such as your Spotify account or your Dropbox account. Instead of having to chase people for renewing credit cards, you can have them automatically debited from Bitcoin wallets and make it a lot easier for merchants. And so that's why we are working on technology to help see this day possible. There's a number of different independent Bitcoin Cash developer groups who manage different versions of the software that run this whole network. We're working with them, as some of them you can see on the screen here, to prepare the technology that's necessary. As I mentioned, there is this upgrade coming on May 15th. The big change is 32 megabyte blocks. But that's not, in fact, what we think is even the most important, because one day the blocks will be even bigger. Another big change is coming, which is the restoring and adding of certain opcodes, operating codes, in the Bitcoin scripting language that the Bitcoin Core people turned off years ago for various reasons. We are having them with the developer groups re-enabled. Here's a list of the ones that are getting re-enabled or added on May 15th. What does that mean? These are very basic codes that can be used to program applications on the Bitcoin network and turn it into essentially a development platform. And by restoring the opcodes, you can enable on Bitcoin Cash technical functions, such as the ability to do tokens. You hear about all these ICOs. Everyone's got a coin. Jimmy coin, Craig coin, you all get a coin, right? People are doing it to raise money. A lot of them are scams. But they're doing them all in Ethereum using something called the ERC20 protocol. Once these opcodes start getting restored on Bitcoin Cash, we are working on solutions to allow companies to create tokens, including ICO-type tokens, as well as tokenizing any financial instrument, stock, bonds, and doing things like rewards tokens for rewards programs, where any asset can get represented on the Bitcoin Cash network by a token. In addition, it opens the way to create smart contracts. These are all things that people think today can only be done on Ethereum using a programming language on the Ethereum blockchain called Solidity and using the ERC20 protocol. We and other groups are working to enable this type of functionality on the Bitcoin Cash network. And that becomes its true power, not just as a currency and a payment system, but creating what I believe and Craig believes is the all-in-one coin and all-in-one blockchain. Whereas another coin, such as Ethereum, does not operate as a payment currency, Bitcoin Cash will, cheap, fast, all over the world. It will also allow tokenization, smart contract functionality, and more. I can't tell you the number of ideas out of Dr. Wright's head about the vast array of technical functions that can be done, or things we're hearing about by many ventures around the world about what they can do on Bitcoin Cash. So it becomes the coin and the blockchain that can do what other coins claim to do, but all in one, which is why we think it is the most powerful and why we have built a business that is creating the technical building blocks to achieve this day. Let me end by just quickly describing a little bit about what we do at nChain, because we get asked that question a lot. If you go look on our website, you probably won't figure out what we do. So let me tell you a little bit about our whole nChain group of businesses. We have 5 key business units, and they're all designed to drive to a very simple mission, which is using everything in our arsenal, research, technology, industry partnerships, investments, to ignite the growth of Bitcoin Cash to be used at a mass enterprise level, not just peer-to-peer, but by the major enterprises of the world, because we want to reinvent how business is done worldwide. Our nChain Limited entity in London is our research and development key service providing company. It is where Craig and our team work developing all kinds of innovation for Bitcoin Cash and the blockchain. We have an IP holding company, nChain Holdings Limited, which holds our IP because we have generated what is growing and we believe is the largest portfolio of blockchain patent applications in the world, and we are going to continue to do so and commercialize our IP. We have an investment entity called nChain Reaction. We call it that because we want to use our investment dollars to spark a chain reaction of Bitcoin Cash growth around the world, where we invest in other companies which have great Bitcoin Cash products and applications. We've done 2 investments so far this year, and I've got a pipeline of more that we're hoping to close deals on in the next few months. We have a consumer-facing business, nCrypt, that just got rebranded to that in Canada, which is a consumer-facing business. It's a Bitcoin wallet and exchange, where if you're in Canada, you can buy and trade Bitcoin and Bitcoin Cash. And we'll be adding functionality to that in the future and taking it globally around the world. And finally, we're also in Bitcoin mining. We have a Bitcoin mining affiliated group called BMG Operations, which mines Bitcoin Cash and mines a very good deal of it. We're creating things to help the community. We are a commercial enterprise, but we're using our IP and technology to spur the growth of Bitcoin Cash. A lot of people in the Bitcoin world don't like patents and IP. They think it should all be open source. We're protecting our IP and innovation to create enterprise value, but also to use it in a way which will benefit Bitcoin Cash's growth. So for example, recently we released a beta test version of our software development kit called Nakasendo. Nakasendo is a Japanese word that means road through the central mountains. And it is the name of an ancient highway trail that connects modern-day Japan, Japan's Tokyo, with Kyoto. And we are using the software development kit to help developers navigate through the mountains of blockchain development. The first version includes modules which implement 2 of our key IP assets. And we're making it available for free usage to anyone who wants to create products and applications only on the Bitcoin Cash blockchain. And we're going to continue to do that, to use our IP and allow free usage of it in a way that spurs the growth of Bitcoin Cash. Other people may want to use it on other blockchains, and they'll approach us for a paid license to it. But if you want to work on Bitcoin Cash, you get access to a lot of our IP and technology without charge. Our nChain Reaction entity I mentioned is focused on investing in Bitcoin Cash products and applications, and they are things that we believe will come to create this e-commerce world. Our first 2 investments are a company in the United States, which has a social media network that uses Bitcoin Cash micropayments to help bloggers and content creators make money from their content, where you can just pay them little bits of money using Bitcoin Cash because they did a great blog. And we have another investment with a South African company called Centbee, which has the most user-friendly and coolest Bitcoin Cash wallet we have seen, and is enabling a merchant payment ecosystem in South Africa, a money remittance system between South Africa, Zimbabwe, and other African countries, and all kinds of new functionality. We are looking at supporting Bitcoin Cash growth all over the world. Craig and I travel all over the world speaking. We've met with companies in Asia, in Southeast Asia, in the Philippines. On Sunday morning, we're getting up bright and early to hop on a flight to go to Kigali, Rwanda, to help spread the mission of Bitcoin Cash at a major Transform Africa summit. Because we are committed to the dream of this new world. It's an exciting one. It reminds me of the energy and hope I had when I came out of law school in the 1990s, where I wanted to go change the world. And 2 decades later, I'm getting the amazing opportunity to work in the world of Bitcoin, and in particular Bitcoin Cash, to create the world of e-commerce. It's a world we hope you get excited about, and that you and your student colleagues and faculty here see the power in, because we would love to all see you working with us one day in the e-commerce world. Thank you very much.